For this lesson, open the project 9D. We've used the timeline button bar in previous lessons to turn link selection on and off and to control snapping. There's lots of shortcut buttons you can add to this bar, and we'll get into that in the chapter on customizing Final Cut Pro. Right now, we're going to add one set of very specialized buttons. Go to Tools, Button Bars, and select Multiclip. This gives you a row of commonly used multiclip functions over the browser, viewer, and canvas. You can explore those on your own time, but over the timeline, it gives you 3 groups of color-coded buttons for switching, cutting, and switching with effects. We'll cover effects in upcoming lessons, but briefly, if you apply an effect to a multiclip, then switch the angle, the effect is not maintained. The middle buttons are for adding a cut to a new angle, and the left buttons are for switching the angle of an existing segment. Each of the button groups is divided into video on the left and audio on the right. These buttons can be used during playback just like clicking in the viewer. While it's a smaller target, the advantage is not having to travel so far with the mouse. Let's try it. Double-click the multiclip in the timeline, and in the viewer, make sure Sync is open. To make our cuts a little easier, Command-drag the audio angle to position 4. Now, the relevant Cut to Video buttons will be right next to each other. Click the timeline background to make it active, and hit play. The buttons can also be used when playback is paused. You can rearrange buttons simply by dragging them to a new location, and delete them by dragging them out of the button bar. If you Control-click a button, you have the option to add a spacer, change the color, remove the button you clicked on, or remove all buttons except for the original defaults. Let's remove all on each of the windows. Finally, you have to remember that having multiple clips loaded in a multiclip can tax your system. To improve performance, or to simply lock your edit and prevent accidental changes, you can collapse a multiclip by selecting it and going to Modify, Collapse Multiclip. As you can see by the image in the viewer, Final Cut is no longer loading all of the angles, only the active angle you selected. And you're not stuck with this. If you ever need to re-edit the clip, you can expand it at any time, even after closing a project, by going back to the Modify menu and selecting Uncollapse Multiclip. These options are also available by Control-clicking the clip. Multiclips take a little effort to set up and are a completely different way of working in Final Cut Pro. And it's not just for stadiums and studios. If you shoot your own stuff and have something going down once and only once, like a wedding or a boxing match, knowing you can cut this way should make you consider the cost of renting an additional camera or two. That's it for Multiclips, and for most of the basic editing features of Final Cut Pro. It's time to start talking about effects.